The man was imprisoned in a room, forced every day to study, to mature, to socialize. There were times he longed to step outside, but Ethan, loosening his belt, laid out the condition. I can let you return to school, but you must tell Hancheng that you followed me of your own will. I'll make sure he meddles less in your affairs. If you don't agree, it doesn't matter. I have more than enough ways to deal with him. Ryan had no other choice but to nod. He couldn't drag Professor Han into the mud with him. When Ethan saw the emptiness in his eyes, his heart unexpectedly ached, even giving rise to a trace of reluctance, unwilling to continue forcing him. After all, his health hasn't been good lately. Ryan only found it laughable. Hadn't he always done the same before? Whether he agreed or not, even when he was feverish, the man never spared him. After all, I'm just a bed for you. If I can't even satisfy you, then what use do I have anymore? Hearing this, Ethan flushed with both anger and shame, unable to endure his self-destruction. He immediately allowed him to visit his mother at the hospital, then turned on his heel to leave. Before walking out, he noticed that Ryan did not hurriedly put his clothes back on as before. An unease stirred within him. Bang! The door slammed shut. At last, Ryan could no longer hold on. He collapsed, burying his face in his hands, tears streaming down like a broken dam. Everything of his had already been destroyed. On the balcony, Ethan smoked irritably. Dylan cautiously asked, "Your father wants to discuss your marriage. It seems he already knows about you and Ryan. Have you ever thought about who you'll end up with?" Ethan sneered with contempt. "In the end, the old man will arrange it. It'll just be a union of interests." Dylan hinted, "At first, the plan was for the Dylan and Ethan families to bond through marriage. But since both of us are men, who could have expected that? Still, I'm certain your father doesn't care whether it's a man or a woman." Ethan's heart flickered. That meant he and Ryan still had a chance. 2 days later, Ethan sent men to escort Ryan to the hospital. The moment he entered the room, he saw Professor Han at his mother's side. The bodyguards immediately tensed, but Ryan stopped them and walked alone to the bed. Seeing him, his mother's spirit brightened a little, telling him that Professor Han had been caring for her these past few days, even praising him as the only student she truly admired. Ryan was overwhelmed with dread. If she found out he had dropped out and that he could never return, what would he do? But Professor Han smiled reassuringly. "He's a gifted student, recognized by all. Always outstanding." His mother beamed, only regretting that she might not live to see her son start a family. The thought that her son would be left utterly alone after her death kept her from resting in peace. Ryan's heart twisted painfully, at a loss for words. Professor Han, calm and steadfast, promised, "From now on, I'll take good care of your mother." Only then did she find relief. When the nurse came to change the IV, Professor Han pulled Ryan aside. "I couldn't reach you these past few days. I was worried sick. I told you before, no matter what hardships you face, we can face them together. Why won't you trust me?" Ryan knew Ethan's nature. He would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. He refused to drag his teacher down with him. Suddenly, Professor Han gripped his hand, speaking earnestly. "Be with me." But he couldn't burden the one he loved. It was already too late. If only he had met him before 12th grade. Now, after years of captivity, drained to numbness by fate, he felt one lifetime tangled with one man was already enough. He would not owe anyone else. His teacher's affection to him was nothing but a weight. Professor Han hurried to hold on, but before he could say more, Ryan firmly pulled away. "To me, you're only someone I deeply respect. Please don't misunderstand." He returned to look at his mother once more, instructing the nurse carefully. He even lied, saying the school valued him highly, which kept him too busy to visit often. Ryan was never good at lying, yet over the years, his lies had become countless, because all his mother's hopes rested on his shoulders. If the truth came out, everything would collapse. Just then, the bodyguard knocked. "You must return before 1 in the morning. If you're late, we'll be in trouble with the young master." Ryan calmly bid farewell, once again urging the nurse to take good care of his mother. On the way back, he begged the bodyguard not to tell Ethan about seeing Professor Han at the hospital. The only thing of value he had was his watch. He immediately took it off and handed it over as compensation, saying he'd claim he lost it. Reluctantly, the bodyguard agreed. 5 days later, Ethan returned from his hometown. The moment he walked in, he pulled Ryan into his arms, laughing that he had missed him to death, then promptly pushed him down on the bed. He heard that lately Ryan had been very obedient, never leaving the house. That made him ecstatic. Ryan found it absurd. The mansion was filled with surveillance. Where could he possibly go? He could only endure Ethan's torment, lying there like a ragged doll. Would death be the only way to escape this man? When Ethan heard this, he roared in fury. "If you dare die, I'll release every video of you online. Let the whole world see." But inside, he reasoned it was just cabin fever driving Ryan to such dark thoughts. He decided to take him out for some diversion soon. Just then, a call summoned him away. Unexpectedly, Dylan arrived, deliberately flaunting his childhood bond with Ethan, boasting that the Ning family had long treated him as one of their own. Ryan only sneered, "If you two can be together, all the better. It'll save others from being harmed." Dylan mistook it for mockery, his teeth grinding with rage. Then a vicious idea struck him. "Your mother still doesn't know you dropped out, does she? If she finds out you're selling your body to pay for her treatment, she'll die of anger. A penniless wretch who can't even afford medicine. What right do you have to compete with me for Ethan?" At once, Ryan leapt up, bowing his head, begging him not to tell his mother. Dylan demanded he come along for a talk. Ryan could only follow obediently. But as they went downstairs, Dylan suddenly seized his hand, shoved himself hard, and flung down the staircase, screaming, "What are you doing?" Ryan froze in horror. At that moment, Li Shen rushed in, witnessing the scene and exploding with fury. "You eat the Ethan family's food, wear their clothes, and yet when the young master's away, you try to harm young Master Dylan. Such a vicious heart!" He immediately helped Dylan to the hospital, while dialing Ethan to report. The scheme had succeeded. Before leaving, Dylan even turned back to cast Ryan a triumphant smile. Ryan stood rooted in place for a long time, his heart cold as ice. He wasn't afraid of how Ethan would punish him. Only that word of this would reach his mother. Meanwhile, Ethan, after being intimate with Ryan, had gone to Bar 758 for new amusement. A young boy leaned on him, eager to please, while a group of playboys tossed him a stack of cash. "If you serve young Master Ethan well, this money's yours." Just then, Li Shen's call came. Ethan panicked, shoving the boy away and rushing out. His friends assumed it was about Ryan, jeering, "When he gets tired of him, we'll have a taste of Ryan ourselves." The words made Ethan seethe, though he couldn't admit his own attachment. He stormed out in rage, hurrying home. The moment he stepped inside, he found Ryan sitting quietly on the bed, waiting for him to decide his fate. After all, he couldn't leave anyway. If his mother was kept in the dark, Ethan could do whatever he wanted. Ryan only wished not to shatter his mother's hopes. Ethan shuddered. "Do you resent me?" Ryan gave a bitter laugh. "I'm just a lowly nobody. What right do I have to resent you?" Ethan's rage flared. He grabbed his collar tightly. "If you don't resent me, then why did you hurt Dylan?" Ryan hurriedly explained that he had never pushed him, but Ethan simply refused to believe it. "Do you expect me to believe he threw himself down the stairs? And besides, Li Shen witnessed everything." Ryan could only give a bitter smile. He had long foreseen this ending. Arguing would be meaningless. As long as his mother never found out about these filthy matters, nothing else mattered. Blazing with fury, Ethan shoved him aside and locked him up, ordering him to reflect on his own mistakes. Afterward, he went straight to the hospital. Dylan, feigning pain and frailty, sought his sympathy, wanting Ethan to personally care for him. Ethan poured water with his own hands, embraced him, and soothed him softly, his only concern being that the Dylan family might make trouble for Ryan, and so he coaxed, "Don't be angry anymore. I've locked Ryan in his room. He won't have the chance to hurt you again." Dylan, delighted, threw himself into his arms. Indeed, Ethan still treated him better. Meanwhile, Ryan was confined in a dark room, chained to his bed for an entire week without being allowed to set foot on the ground. Only when Ethan's father, Jack, arrived did the guards finally remove his shackles. Jack appeared mild, reasonable, as though he truly knew how to judge fairly. Taking the chance, Ryan poured out everything about being forced, hoping the father could restrain his son and set him free. But Jack had come not to help, but to scold. Even if his son had erred, one could not resolve matters in such an extreme fashion. If anything happened to Dylan and his family pressed for accountability, he himself would not be able to bear the consequences. The words struck Ryan like lightning. Clearly, it was they who were extreme, yet Jack refused to listen. He only cared about giving the Dylan family an explanation. Immediately, he ordered his men to make the call, preparing to send Ryan over as a gesture of sincerity. But just then, Ethan stormed in, snatched the phone away, and cut the line. "My person, I'll handle him myself. Don't be rash. A pet that isn't trained properly will always bring disaster." At those words, Ryan let out a cold, mocking laugh. So, in the eyes of the Ethan family, he was nothing but livestock, a beast kept in a cage. He would rather be punished by the Dylan family than keep facing Ethan. But Ethan saw it as ingratitude. He dragged him upstairs without hesitation. Jack roared in fury, but his son was never afraid of him. After all, he was the only heir. Push him too far, and he would dare anything. Back in the room, Ethan flung him onto the bed, pinned him down, and forced himself to explain through gritted teeth. Dylan's older brother is infamous for his debauchery. He only wants young, handsome men. With a face like yours, if you fell into his hands, do you know how miserable you'd be? Ryan only sneered with disdain. And how are you any different from him? In the end, it's just a change of tormentor. Ethan's expression darkened, instantly. Is there truly not even the slightest trace of attachment to me in your heart? Not even a little? To Ryan, he was mad. Who could possibly feel attachment toward the man who had stolen everything from him, who had forced him into ruin? Rage surged. Ethan seized his chin, forcing it up. I'll ask one last time. Do you truly want me to hand you over to someone else? When he lunged forward, intent on forcing him again, Ryan suddenly snatched a shard of porcelain in his hand and slashed hard at his neck. Ethan dodged, but still received a long bleeding cut. Shocked and furious, he stared. Never had. He thought Ryan would dare to kill him. Ryan laughed coldly. Did you think I'd let you keep tormenting me? I only regret not being able to kill you outright. Grinding his teeth until his jaw ached, Ethan nearly strangled him on the spot. Just then, Dylan knocked at the door, asking him to take him to the hospital. Ethan snapped out of it, roughly, brushed him off, and called someone else instead. Not long after, another man appeared at the villa. Knowing well that this man harbored lustful interest in Ryan, Ethan deliberately said in front of him, "Do as you like." The man grinned, delighted, while Ethan lingered nearby, convinced that Ryan would soon beg him for mercy. After Ethan left, the man wasted no time. Leering as he lunged, caressing the young man's delicate face, Ryan seized the chance. Take off these chains for me. I'm still stained with blood. Let me wash, and then I'll serve you properly. Enthralled, the man obeyed without hesitation. Ryan walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and for the first time, a genuine smile curved his lips. At last, he could be free. Meanwhile, Ethan had Peter come to dress his wound, yet his unease only grew. Ryan was stubborn to the core. When he couldn't see him, an anxious restlessness gnawed at him. "Whose personal doctor are you, really?" he snapped. "I'm the one injured," Peter advised calmly. "Stop pushing him so hard." He's strong-willed. "If he truly gives up on life, it will all end badly." Ethan scoffed coldly. With someone waiting on him every day, what could he possibly despair over? But despite the words, a faint dread tugged at him. When silence dragged on too long, he could no longer hold back. He rushed upstairs and kicked the door open. The man inside looked startled, confused at the sudden intrusion. Ignoring him, Ethan shoved him aside and tore through the room in a frenzy. But when he opened the bathroom door, his heart froze. There sat Ryan against the wall, blood gushing from his wrist. For a moment, Ethan was paralyzed with shock. He had only meant to frighten him. Never had he believed he would truly attempt suicide. Stumbling into the hall, panic overtook him as he screamed incoherently for Peter. The doctor rushed in, immediately working to stop the bleeding. Luckily, they had found him in time. Any later, and the outcome would have been fatal. Still, the wound was grave, and Ryan was quickly wheeled into emergency surgery. Ethan waited outside, restless, unable to even light a cigarette. With life and death hanging in the balance, he couldn't risk it. The surgery dragged on endlessly. Finally, Peter emerged, exhausted. Ethan leapt forward. The stitching was difficult, but the bleeding has stopped. At last, he exhaled. Relief flooding through him. If he was alive, that was enough. Yet something nagged at him. He had ordered every shard of porcelain removed. How had Ryan still managed? Peter's words struck like thunder. He bit through the artery in his own wrist. The cruelty of it staggered him. To choose such a method. All he had wanted was for him to admit fault. Just a little. For now, Ryan was placed in the ICU. Ethan stayed the whole night at his side. By morning, he stirred awake. The first words from his lips were, "Dr. Peter, you shouldn't have saved me." Peter urged him gently. "Don't destroy yourself. As long as you live, there's hope. If your mother saw this, do you know how it would break her heart?" At the mention of his mother, a faint flicker of life returned to his gaze. Hearing that Ethan was outside, he pleaded with the doctor not to let him in. He couldn't bear to see him again. But just then, Ethan strode through the doorway, catching every word. Fury erupted. "Who is it you don't want to see? If you dare try dying again, I'll release every one of your videos online for the world to see. Your mother won't even get her treatment anymore." He knew precisely what mattered most to him. He didn't believe Ryan would dare risk it again. Peter quickly intervened. "Don't agitate him further. Don't push him past the edge." A nurse entered then, carrying a bowl of plain congee. The doctor carefully sat Ryan up, intending to feed him himself. But the young man could not swallow a bite. Irritated, Ethan snatched the bowl, shoved a spoonful toward his lips. "Eat! Do you not understand human speech?" Disgust flared in. Ryan's eyes, slapping the bowl away, spilling its contents. Ethan nearly struck him in anger, but Peter pushed him out. "The patient is still weak. He cannot endure more agitation." Fuming, Ethan slammed the door behind him. The doctor comforted Ryan softly. "Try to look past it. If your body fails, what will your mother do?" Of course, Ryan understood, but he no longer wished for any ties with Ethan. They had barely exchanged a few words when Ethan returned, carrying a food container, pounding on the door with rage. Helpless, Peter could only repeat his plea. Don't push him too far. Just then, a nurse rushed over to find Peter, saying another ward had an emergency, and he was needed immediately. Peter still worried the two of them might quarrel again, but Ryan understood and reassured him. "It's fine. You should go." Enki. Those words, jealousy exploded in Ethan's chest. So, the two of you seem quite close, don't you? Seeing Ryan remain silent, he had no choice but to suppress his anger. Opening the thermos, he said, "This is soup I had Li Shen prepare. Especially if you don't want your mother to find out, then behave yourself and finish it for me." He raised a spoonful to Ryan's lips, but Ryan only wanted to drink it himself. At once, Ethan's displeasure showed. So, when Peter fed him, it was fine. But when he did, it wasn't. Fine. He'd overlooked it this once, but Ryan had better not push his luck. Ryan answered coldly, without the slightest courtesy. "Are you planning to hand me over to another guest again?" "Well, that's fine too. At least then I'll earn enough money sooner to pay off my debt to the Ethan family." The words struck Ethan with a pang of guilt. He was about to lower himself and apologize when Ryan continued, saying he never wanted any connection with him again. Instantly, Ethan's face darkened, his tone like ice. "Don't get ahead of yourself. If you do, I'll lock you in the house and you won't take a single step outside." Ryan said nothing more, only burrowed into the blanket, lying still. Ethan reached out to pull the quilt up for him, but the moment his hand drew near, Ryan's entire body trembled, mistaking his touch for another attempt to force himself on him. His voice was bitter. "Go to Dylan. You two are about to be married anyway." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang, cutting him off. Meanwhile, Ryan thought silently to himself, "Once I heal, I must visit Mother immediately." But Ethan had no idea that the call he had just answered shattered his very soul. Say that again. What happened to Ryan's mother? For years, the only things he had spoken to Ryan about were debts and the enormous medical fees for his mother. If that chain around Ryan's neck suddenly disappeared, what would become of him? He thanked heaven for having already confiscated Ryan's phone. When he returned to the room, he saw Ryan standing by the window. Quickly, Ethan draped a blanket around his shoulders, softening his tone for the first time. "If you really don't want to stay at home, I can arrange for you to work at the company. Whatever you want, I'll grant it." But Ryan wanted nothing but to leave him. Ethan pulled him tightly into his arms, his voice hard and unyielding. "That I will never allow." Even Peter couldn't hold back from advising. "You should let Ryan go. After all, you're about to marry Dylan." But Ethan didn't care. "Dylan is gentle. He won't mind," Peter shot back. "And if Ryan had someone else, would you be able to accept it? Besides, Ryan has never been one to crave wealth." At that, Ethan flew into a rage. The mere thought of Ryan loving another made his chest ache like it was being cut open. He roared, "Mind your own business! Without your family's protection, would he even be lying safely in this hospital right now?" Peter fell silent, realizing he could not persuade him further. 3 days later, Ryan was discharged and returned home. But every day, he was forced to watch Dylan cling tightly to Ethan. And yet, no matter what, Ethan's eyes never left Ryan. Whenever he stood and left the room, Ethan brushed Dylan aside and hurried after him, trailing like a shadow, fussing over every little thing. Ryan couldn't even be bothered to respond. Dylan was so furious, he nearly ground his teeth to dust. Back in his room, Ryan entered the bathroom. The familiar sight sent waves of unease through Ethan. When Ryan emerged, he looked surprised, assuming Ethan had already gone off with Dylan. Instead, Ethan hurried forward with a towel, wanting to dry his hair for him. Ryan immediately dodged, fearing he had ulterior motives, and seized the chance to demand, "Tomorrow I want to go to the hospital. It's been so long since I saw my mother. She'll be worried." To win his compliance, he even began taking off his shirt. But tonight, Ethan was different. He helped him put it back on, then held him tightly in his arms. If it could always be like this, it would be enough. "If you don't leave, I can give you everything." But Ryan's heart was set only on seeing his mother. Reluctantly, Ethan said, "Wait until your body is fully healed." To distract him, he suggested taking him out, carefully helping him with fresh clothes. "Your body is weak. Don't catch a chill." He took him to the hot springs, supporting him every step, terrified he might slip. The unusual gentleness only made Ryan wary. He grew suspicious of Ethan's true intent. Of course, Ethan wanted him, but tonight he was determined to maintain the atmosphere. Ryan thought he was strange. Annoyed, Ethan snapped, "Even when I treat you well, is it suspicious? Would you rather I lock you up?" Unexpectedly, Ryan turned and bolted, hastily pulling on his clothes, determined to leave. Ethan immediately ordered his men to block him. When the attendants grabbed him, he struggled violently. Fearing he'd get hurt, Ethan held him close, but Ryan was adamant. "I have to go to the hospital now!" Ethan's anger flared. "If you won't listen, then I'll lock you at home." Ryan fought with all his strength, just as Dylan entered the room, holding a knife. He approached the bed with contemptuous insults, then coldly delivered the news. "Your mother is in critical condition." Ryan's face turned deathly pale. He pleaded desperately, "Please, cut the rope for me!" Without another word, Dylan slashed the ties, giving him a chance at freedom. It seemed the green tea was merciful, but in truth, behind the act lay a far darker plot. Dylan watched coldly as Ryan clambered out the window and fled. Then, rushing to the guards with feigned panic, he shouted, "Ryan stabbed me and ran away!" The bodyguards froze in shock, then scattered in pursuit. Dylan sneered inwardly. Whether Ryan escaped or not, his life was as good as ruined. Meanwhile, Ryan raced into the hospital, only to find the ward empty. A nurse explained the patient was in surgery. Xiaohui, her eyes red from crying, looked at him with trembling voice. "Where have you been all this time? Auntie wanted to see you one last time. The doctor said her condition is dire. The family should prepare themselves." The words struck Ryan like lightning. Moments later, the operating room doors swung open. He rushed forward, demanding news of his mother, only to hear a quiet apology. "We did everything we could. Please go in to see her one last time." His heart stopped. His entire world collapsed in an instant. Memories of his mother flooded back. The woman who had endured every hardship for him, pinned all her hopes on him, and now lay frail and motionless on the bed. He sank beside her, clutching her cold hand, unable to utter a word all night. Suddenly, warm arms wrapped around him from behind. It was Professor Han. "If you need to cry, then cry. I'm here." At that moment, Ethan, frantic with worry, rushed into the hospital. He heard nurses whispering in the hallway. The patient didn't make it. Her son didn't even get to see her one last time. His chest was constricted painfully. He stormed into the ward. But just as he reached for the door, a heart-wrenching cry rang out. Inside, Ryan collapsed in Professor Han's embrace, sobbing uncontrollably. Ethan's chest was clenched. He moved to approach, only for Professor Han to swing. A fist at him. Fury blazed. Ethan grabbed him, ready to strike back. But Ryan's broken voice cut through. "I want peace. Both of you, get out!" The two men had no choice but to leave, each step heavy, each glance reluctant. Inside, Ryan sat quietly by his mother's side, watching as funeral workers draped a white cloth over her. His trembling hand slipped from hers. As they carried her body away, the pain in his chest split him open. It was then he truly realized he was alone in this world. Ethan stepped forward. "Ryan, don't grieve too much." But in Ryan's eyes, there was nothing left but hate. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Ethan froze, speechless. Ryan stared straight at him, voice cold as ice. "You knew, and still hid it from me. You stole my last chance to see her. She must have wanted to see me." The enormity of his mistake hit Ethan like a hammer. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Professor Han came forward, gently consoling. "Before she passed, your mother told me, if you could live well, she could rest in peace." Ethan ached to draw Ryan into his arms, but didn't know how. When Ryan stood to leave, he blocked the doorway. "Where are you going?" Ryan's eyes blazed. "I want to go home, to be with my mother a little longer. Don't follow me." Cold, bitter smile touched his lips. "Ethan, if you come any closer, I'll die right before your eyes." Ethan stood frozen, dazed. Ryan stumbled away, but his body was too weak. After only a few steps, he collapsed. When he woke, he was in a hospital bed again, Professor Han watching over him. "Ryan, you're awake. You've slept for a whole day. I'll make you some ginger water to warm you up." Ryan's throat tightened. So, he was still alive. Professor Han tucked the blanket around him and sat down at his side. "Ryan, we must always look forward. Don't let the past chain you down. I've kept your school records safe. You can still return to your studies." Stepping down a rung, there were hardly any acquaintances left in his life. Ryan buried his face in his hands, trying to hide the grief, yet tears still spilled silently from the corners of his eyes. He never imagined that Han Cheng had quietly done so much for him. Only after a long while did Ryan gradually calm down. That was when Han Cheng noticed the half-healed scar on his wrist. His voice was gentle. "Stay here with me for the time being. Don't talk about being a burden. If you feel guilty, later you can help me as my assistant when you have free time. Without you translating documents, I truly can't entrust it to anyone else." Ryan's voice was low. "I want to stay until my mother's 49-day memorial is over." Han Cheng finally relaxed a little and nodded. "All right. Your mother surely wouldn't want to see you so worn down. In the coming days, you must take care of yourself." Ryan only nodded quietly. After Han Cheng left, he slowly sat up and whispered under his breath, "Mother, forgive me. I've disappointed you. But right now, I cannot follow you. If I die now, before long, Ethan will find another lover, live as though I never existed, and forget me completely. I cannot die like that. I must make him live in unease forever." The days spent with Han Cheng, he was cared for with meticulous attention, and gradually his mood lifted. Meanwhile, Ethan was drowning in drink at a bar. The manager brought a group of newcomers into the private room. At a glance, Ethan froze. Among them was a shockingly familiar face, a boy whose features resembled Ryan's to an uncanny degree. The manager immediately caught his gaze and said with a smile, "Master Ethan, this one is new. He's got a sick family member. Had no choice but to enter this line of work." Ethan's eyes locked onto the boy. "Him. Stay." The boy sat down, stammering an introduction. My name is Liam." Someone nearby suddenly interjected. "Doesn't he look exactly like Ryan?" Timidly, Liam lifted a glass of wine toward him. Would you like a drink, sir?" Ethan's heart twisted with conflicting emotions. He replied softly, "No." Liam thought he had offended him, panicked, and his trembling hands spilled the wine across the table. The manager immediately barked, "What's wrong with you? You've stepped into this business, so stop acting all high and mighty." The sight was painfully familiar to Ethan, cutting him like glass. He dismissed the manager and quietly asked, "What illness does your family member have?" Flustered, Liam stammered, My younger brother has acute leukemia. We need money urgently for treatment. So I had no choice." Ethan's gaze faltered, Ryan's figure surfacing in his mind. If, back then, Ryan's mother had fallen ill without his family's support, would he too have ended up like Liam, forced into such a filthy place, trying to please men? "How much do you need?" he asked. "10,000, Liam whispered, a paltry sum for him. Ethan pulled out a card and handed it over. "I'll give it to you. From now on, don't ever set foot in this place again." Liam stared in shock. "Are you really?" He thought for sure he was being taken as a kept boy and hastily reached to unbutton his shirt. Ethan's eyes hardened. I don't need anything from you. Take the card and go. Liam froze, then choked back tears. Master Ethan, you're truly a good man. If you ever need me in the future, just say the word. Go. Ethan dismissed him with a wave. As Liam's figure faded, it overlapped in his eyes with that of Ryan. A sharp sting rose in his nose. Perhaps it was only the draft through the daughter making his vision blur. Drinking after drink, amid the noisy revelry, his heart remained hollow. The next morning, when he opened the door, his head still pounded from the hangover. Lishan hurried over. Young master, you drank too much last night. It upset your stomach. Let me make you some thin porridge. Ethan suddenly asked, Breakfast? Has it been prepared for Ryan? Lishan looked startled. He's not here anymore? Only then. Did it hit him? Right. Ryan was no longer by his side. Hearing the commotion, Dylan approached, clinging to his arm. You haven't gone to campus for days now. Let's go together tomorrow? Ethan shook him off coldly. We'll talk later. Watching his retreating, Dylan smirked, eyes glinting with shadows. During the meal, Ethan received a call. Someone reported they had found Ryan's address. He dropped everything and rushed out. At that moment, Han Cheng was just about to take Ryan out for some fresh air. The doorbell rang. When Han Cheng opened it, he was met with Ethan's fierce glare. He tried to keep him from coming inside, but Ethan shoved the door wide open. When Ryan appeared, his expression was eerily calm. Ethan sneered. Living happily, aren't you? Professor Han, what do you think would happen if your students found out you fancy men? Han Cheng bristled. Love is equal. Who one loves has nothing to do with status. A contemptuous snort. Ryan, come back with me. Han Cheng blocked him. And why should he? Have you ever thought about what you've done? The scar on his wrist, I haven't even held you accountable for that yet. Ethan's lips curled into a cold smile. For the simple reason that he's been in my bed for years. Han Cheng ground his teeth, roaring, Ethan, you bastard! If you take one more step, I'll kill myself right here. The voice came. Off from behind, in his hand, Ryan held a knife to his own neck. Ryan! Han Cheng cried out in panic. Put the knife down, don't do this! Ethan froze too, about to rush forward, but the blade nicked skin, blood beading along its edge. His voice remained calm. Stay away from me! Panic finally overtook Ethan. He retreated a few steps. Put the knife down! He shot Han Cheng a glance, signaling. Get the knife from him. Don't let him hurt himself. Tense, Han Cheng urged softly. This is all his fault. He should be the one punished. Don't make your body the price. Ethan's face darkened, and at last he ground out between his teeth. Fine, I'll leave. The moment he stepped out, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. His face turned black with rage. Inside, Han Cheng quickly bandaged Ryan's wound. Fortunately, it was only a scratch. After calming him, he handed him a bank card. Ryan, your mother deserves a proper burial. Take this. Don't refuse. It's just a loan from me. Watching him fuss over every detail, Ryan felt a deep swell of emotion. Seeing him lost in thought, Han Cheng bent closer. What is it? Startled, Ryan stammered. Nothing. Han Cheng smiled. You look beautiful when you smile. Don't keep that cold face all the time. Others might think I've upset you. A flush burned across Ryan's cheeks. Beautiful. Could men be described that way? Leaning closer, Han Cheng teased. Then what should I call you? Ryan's heart raced in confusion, but before he could answer, Han Cheng chuckled, tapping his nose affectionately. All right, I'll stop teasing. Go rest. I'll get dinner ready. Watching his back fade into the kitchen, Ryan thought to himself, Professor Han treats me so well. Maybe the only thing I can repay him with is this body of mine. After dinner, dressed in a bathrobe, he stepped into Han Cheng's room. Professor, are you busy right now? Not very, Han Cheng smiled. Fingers clutching at the hem of his robe, Ryan whispered, "I don't want to think of him anymore, or feel fear being close to someone because of him. Can you help me?" The sight of him twisted Han Cheng's heart. Softly, he called, "Ryan." His eyes shone with yearning. "It's all right. Just hold me. I'm not even a complete man anymore. More than anyone else, I want it to be you." Han Cheng's expression grew solemn. He grabbed a jacket and draped it over him. "Don't debase yourself like this." Tears welled up in Ryan's eyes, his voice trembling. You think I'm dirty, don't want to touch me. I washed thoroughly before coming here. There's nothing of him left on me. Before, it was always him forcing me. I never wanted it." Han Cheng's gaze was deep, steady. "How could I ever think you're dirty? But this must happen." "Naturally. Do you want me because you truly like me, or just out of gratitude?" Ryan lowered his head, silent. Han Cheng gently lifted his chin. "Of course I want to be closer to you too. But if I take advantage of your weakness, how am I any different from him?" Ryan's body trembled, voice breaking. "Professor, I never thought of it as taking advantage. I just don't want him to control me anymore." Holding him tight, Han Cheng soothed, "Don't worry, things will get better. But will they really?" That day, a message arrived on his phone. "When are you coming back? Don't think staying away for a few days means you're free." He didn't need to guess who it was. Han Cheng hugged him tighter. "Ryan, I just hope that one day you'll truly accept me, not just because you feel indebted." A faint slipped from Ryan's lips. Hesitantly, he asked, "Professor, can I sleep here tonight?"